So this video is probably going to get demonetized. Not because I'm covering anything specifically icy, but the last time YouTube struck a video of mine, it was for medical misinformation. And, you know, that wasn't fun, and I'm still not a fan of that. But I do think it's important to talk about COVID. I know that we are still in the middle of the pandemic, and I know that things have loosened up in terms of regulations, but I do think it's kind of important to showcase something that more people weren't thinking about when COVID had just happened, when we were just entering that. And it's something called the Swiss cheese model. This first one is from Megnerd. Said, Suris said recently, you can never have too much booba, knowing some very cursed fan art would come of it. This is my attempt to make him regret those words. It was going to be a cat girl, Suris, but I started drawing all the boobas and it made me think of a cow. So I present Cowgirl Suris. Okay. Okay. Touché. Touché. The next one we have here is from Mathematical Cabbage. A showdown. Suris versus the NYFB. The NYFB sends forth 3 challengers. Pat Meowl, Steven and Person, and Tommy McFurtree. Enjoy the fruits of my nocturnal noon art thoughts. Oh my god. Okay. Why do the cephalopods in Splatoon have booba? Because booba makes everything better. Also, Marina is best girl, and if you disagree with me, you're fucking wrong. Anyways, the last one we have here is from Axo that has cream. Animation is hard, but there's no better way to get better than Slime Suris jump gif. Jump, 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 jump. Anyways, as always, thank you all for your fan art submissions. Wow, those ones. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, if you have not already subscribed or hit the bell notification icon, please consider doing so, as it helps out the channel more than I really can get into right now. But there's also the Patreon. I would greatly appreciate Patreon. Also, Anubian, thank you for redeeming your points for an freaking degen. Anyways, the Swiss cheese model. Let's go ahead and take a look here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a little bit of a visual for you all. So the Swiss cheese model is a model for respiratory virus pandemic defense. This is to recognize that no single intervention is perfect in preventing the spread of a respiratory illness. Now, the model itself is a model used in risk analysis and risk management, and this includes multiple things: aviation safety, engineering, healthcare, emergency service organizations. It's the principle behind layered security. It can be used for anything, not just respiratory viruses. We're going to talk about it in regards to COVID, but it can be used for multiple things. Hopefully, just from the visual, you can kind of understand what we're looking at. But let's go ahead and talk about it in depth anyway. It's supposed to liken any system of prevention that we can use to Swiss cheese. Now, what was one of the things that was said about COVID when it came out? COVID travels this way, so a mask is not going to prevent you from getting it, and so people would disparage masks. And then they would say, well, we have to go to the store, so they would disparage staying at home for long periods of time to lower the rate of getting COVID. Any one thing that we were told could be used to help stop or slow the spread of COVID would be thrown in your face as, well, that's not going to stop the virus. You're right. None of these things alone would stop the virus. But by looking at these systems as models of layered defense with different layers stacking on top of one another, Any lapse or weakness in one particular defense doesn't necessarily allow the risk to materialize on the other side. It gets caught by something. Having a single point of failure in a mask can be prevented from causing something to get to you if that single point of failure is met up with another bit of defense. So, for instance, let's take a look at what the model shows here. Physical distance, staying home if sick. That won't necessarily solve everything, because if somebody is having to bring you your groceries, they still can cause you to get ill. And also, you may need to go outside either for your job or any variety of things. So what's the next layer of defense? Having a mask on. I'm an advocate for having a mask if you are sick, not necessarily having a mask at all times, everywhere you go, all the time now, because, well, quite frankly, we've seen masks if sick help a shit ton in other countries. So masks if sick being a thing we use here, I would like us to do that. The demonization of masks is kind of dumb. But let's go ahead and continue here. So what happens if the mask fails? If the mask itself cannot get rid of everything? Well, hand hygiene and cough etiquette helps a lot too. So what do I mean by a mask failing? Let's say that you are in a room and you sneeze, and you don't want your sneeze to be caught by the mask because you don't have a spare on you, so you end up sneezing on a surface. We've had a failure even though you have had a mask. Or you have a sneeze that is so hard that it does get bits through the mask or around the mask, whichever way. Or you're using a mask that isn't that great. Anybody who comes in contact with an infected surface isn't necessarily automatically going to become ill. If everybody is practicing better hand hygiene and they're practicing better etiquette with their coughs and sneezes, the likelihood of that material, that droplet, coming from your mouth, your throat, your nostrils, and getting to somebody else is lower. Hand hygiene matters because if you have good hand hygiene, washing your hands before contact with various surfaces, keeping hand sanitizer on you to make sure that you're killing any germs that you happen to come across, then the likelihood of you transferring something to your eyes, which is how COVID gets to you in many cases, is lower. Because COVID travels via droplets, your skin can act as a barrier from COVID. But if you breathe in the droplets, if the droplets get in through your tear ducts, then you are going to be infected. This usually happens by touching an infected surface and then touching your eyes. Which is why the next thing would be avoiding touching your face. Let's say your hand hygiene ain't that great. Avoiding touching your face is the next layer. But let's say that fails. You still touch your face a lot. If you're in a crowded area, an area that is more likely to have more people in it, limiting your time in that area will limit your exposure. Also, if you happen to get infected, testing yourself very quickly and tracing the source of where you got infected can help people avoid further infection, which can stop the virus from mutating even if you necessarily have gotten infected. Making sure that your areas are ventilated and have air filtration and air can get to the outdoors instead of those vapors being trapped inside can help a fuck ton. And then, let's say you are infected and you're stuck at home. Governments having financial support available for you allows you to not need to go outside and get more people sick in order to survive. This is another layer of help, which of course goes hand in hand with being quarantined, being in isolation. And then of course, that final barrier, if all else fails, we can at least lower the rate of harm to your body and the rate of transference between you and other people by utilizing a vaccine. This is the different. This also has a designation between personal responsibilities, staying home if sick, masks, hand etiquette, and shared responsibilities, government assistance, quarantine, vaccines, and having them free and available to the public. Each and every one of these layers is not perfect, and I guarantee you've heard responses to every one of these. Well, the government can't pay for everybody's shit. Well, we can't really trace everything. Touching, I gotta itch my eyes. Vaccines, they don't work, they cause the autisms. Masks, I don't want to wear masks. Like, if you look at every single one of these, you've probably heard a counter argument to each one. And you're right. Each and every one of these has holes in it. Each and every one of these things are not foolproof. They do not stop everything, but they don't have to. This is the reason why the Swiss cheese model is so useful. You don't necessarily need one of these things to protect you. You're supposed to have a layering of them. So if you're in a situation where you can't wear a mask, like, let's say in my case, when I had only cloth masks and I didn't have actual, like, disposable ones, having a cloth mask at home basically meant that I couldn't go outside for any amount of time because they got animal fibers on them, and I am allergic to my own animals. Boy, howdy. Not fun. But I do spend most of my time inside. I am vaccinated. When I am in an area that is severely crowded, I do limit my time out there. I don't generally touch my face a lot when I am outside, but I do also have hand sanitizer everywhere in the United States now, which is helpful. So when if I'm out and I'm sneezing and I'm coughing, afterwards I'll usually go and sanitize my hands so I'm not fucking up another surface. Like, this is the thing about this model. It doesn't require any one thing. It layers as many of them on top of each other to keep you safe. This is why people can go outside without living in fear. Because if you have these things keeping you safe, you can go outside and live a standard functional life. So do you wonder if personal cheese or shared cheese tastes better? Shared cheese tastes better. Shared cheese always tastes better. In the Swiss cheese model, any organization's defense against something is modeled as a series of imperfect barriers, represented as slices of cheese, as shown here. We use Swiss cheese because it shows holes. We know that a single piece of Swiss cheese will not be a barrier that can solve everything, but this model does illustrate that although many layers of defense lie between hazards and accidents, there are flaws in each and every layer. But if you layer your defenses, that accident itself will not necessarily occur. Not in as severe a way as it otherwise would. The model itself relies on something called percolation theory. In statistics, Hannah Reloaded, thank you so much for the raid. We have cheese going on. How was your stream? I'm going to make sure that we don't lose where we are right now. But in mathematics, percolation theory is the behavior of a network when node or links are added. So when you add more and more layers of Swiss cheese, when they are percolating, you create a safer and safer environment. So, hopefully, this helps a little bit, because this framework can be used for healthcare, but it can also be used for any type of defense. Even if you're in a middle of a card game tournament, this is the idea of just having redundant pieces in a deck to deal with problems. Every piece of removal you have in your deck may not be able to solve all problems, but running all of them might be able to give you enough defense to protect yourself in a given game. Much like using these as defense in a pandemic can be incredibly helpful. So please, if you've got somebody that disparages any of these things, maybe introduce them to the Swiss cheese theory. Maybe introduce them to this way that we look at defense against pandemics and pretty much any defensive system. This type of theory, this strategy can be utilized for anything. Connect Distortion, thank you for the follow. So please, consider doing so. Anyways, that's about all for that. I wanted to get into that because I found it interesting, and I hadn't actually been introduced to that theory up until a handful of days ago. So please, let me know. As always, if you enjoyed the content, let me know in the comment section below. If you can, maybe hit subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. That would be awesome. You could also hit the like button. Those are great things to do. If you want to check out my Patreon, that's a thing you can do as well. Links are below. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.